All right, g'day everyone. Welcome to the show, and back on the show we've got Barry Littleton. How you going, Barry?
Pretty good. How you doing, Pete?
Good, man. It's always a pleasure to catch up. We've been chatting a bit before the show now.
Likewise.
We're always in communication, or you and Souls, you've got your thing going on as well. I wanted to get you back on. Look, so many people learn so much from you, including myself, and you connect a lot of dots for me, and I know that it works the same for you, but you've opened my eyes up to a lot of things lately in terms of perspective and the true nature of how tripped out things are. But I wanted to get you back on because last time we spoke, and this was off air, was about the sons of God, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you mind explaining to the viewers and listeners who the sons of God are and who the other group was with them, basically how everything went to crap here? Would you mind going into that? Because you and Sol have got similar perspectives and past life memories of this as well, so it's not like you're just pulling it out of your backside. You've got experience and memory of this.
Yeah. No problem. It started off in childhood having things are really strong visions in terms of actually being there,
Mm-hmm.
And the first time it happened was a vision I had that I was on this, it's like a stairs, we call it, and I've got another gentleman standing next to me, all right? And he's melanin dominant, like I am. He stands probably, I'd say, 8 feet tall, so I must have been that tall too, all right? He's connecting with me telepathically, and he's looking over the horizon, over these stairs, and he's saying, we're going to pay for this. Worse, our descendants are going to pay for this, for the way we're treating them, okay? So I look over these stairwell, I see these things over there. From an anthropological perspective, I call them Australopithecus, one of the hominid branches, all right? And they're doing cement work on these pyramids, on monolithic structures, when we had anti-gravity technology. They didn't have to do that. We were forcing them to do it, so they were slaves. And he's saying we paid for this. And as I look over at him, all right, he's got, it almost sounds comical, but he's got, a headdress on. It's a long one, a big one, and it's not quite the same headdress we would see from Egypt, all right? So this is before that, all right? And this headdress, and he's got just tons of gold on, all right? And to crack a joke, it kind of reminded me of the A-Team back in the 80s, Mr. T. Mr. T wore all this gold, man. He's always dripping, and it kind of reminded me of that. But I come to find out later that was a problem when we were here then was the gold got in the way and the fact of being treated as gods, okay?
Now, would there be any connection to the mining and the Anunnaki, or we've got a lot of stuff in Sumer going back, I don't know, I would say around the time of Egypt, but obviously, as you just said, this is going back before Egypt. Like, are we going to Mu? Are we going to Atlantis? What are we going? How far back do you think we're going with this around a time frame, if we can put one on it?
I can see back far as Mu, okay? I can see Mu as a single continent, and then being wars, and the first cataclysm would have broken it up, okay? Mm-hmm. And I think that's where you get Atlantis and Lemuria, okay? And I'm sorry, but they sound a lot similar to race wars. And when I look at what Zechariah Ascension says about the reptilians and a lot of other people that say about the Anunnaki, they claim them to be fish-like, but actually they're reptilian-like. And if you listen to what Credo said, they were reptilians, all right? I think that is another faction that was here at that time. But they weren't the same beings we're calling the sons of God right now with the elongated craniums. And I'm sorry, but no one wants to admit that these beings were melanin-dominant individuals. And if you look at them, they didn't have these fine characteristics that they're making King Tut and them have. They had much more African features. Okay?
So for those who don't know, you mean they were black, and also, do you mean also like if we look at the Sphinx, you can tell that's of a black person, not what they're trying to perceive as how they've ever tried to change. You can tell by the nose and the features.
As I remember it, we've got two distinctive groups. I'll say that. Mm-hmm. One is this race we call the sons of God, mm-hmm. all right? And the other would be the sons of men, which would be the Neanderthals, the hominids to a certain degree, all right? And one day when this hybrid project went on, the sons of God are mating with these daughters of men. It says that in the Christian Bible, and several religions say that, all right? How these fallen angels or whatever, that's not quite right, came down and mated with humans, all right? And that says something. One is they were genetically compatible with us. Like you and I know that the reptilians appear to be also.
Yeah.
And I've become very interesting in the people I've been communicating with since doing these shows that are very much entranced and entrenched by the reptilian romance. And some are saying, well, you don't understand, they're not hostile at all. That's my lover, yada, yada, yada. Why are they genetically compatible with us? Because they're from here. They're here before humanity. Those reptiles.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's probably a mistake. I've done the t-shirts with the reptilian dildo bangers then.
No, I kind of like it, bro. I think I was going to order one.
But it's very important. Please go on, because this is important what you're saying about the lovers, like affair basically, and that no, this isn't right, this is my lover, and other things like that. Please go on. I actually had a couple of shows back, Steve Gilmore comment on this, how this is all agreed upon. Just for those, just to see another perspective, but I'd really like to hear your perspective on this, because it does, a lot of what you say does resonate and is in line with what I've experienced also.
Mm-hmm. It was this hybrid project, all right? And that's why the Sons of God came here, was for what we would call the biological uplifting of the hominids, okay? When that happens, you start seeing, by the time you get to King Tut and after Mu was destroyed, all right, you start seeing people like King Tut had a cranium like you and I. He did not have a elongated cranium. And that's why Akhenaten has become so famous right now for his cranium structure and the fact he changed this to this and this, then a one God system, all right? But as you see, he was struggling with the same problems that the sons of men had, which is carnage, all right? I start having other visions, all right? And these aren't visions. I'm like there, man. And as a kid, that was very disturbing, because when I go to school, this doesn't have crap to do with Christopher Columbus and the crap they're teaching us, okay? You know what I mean? But this is the next thing I'm seeing, okay, is myself. I'm sitting in a hall. It's like a banquet hall, all right? And it's a large one. And the shape of it is not at all like a banquet hall we'd see now, all right? And there are even guards there. And these guards are very, very tall too, but they're a little bigger. Can't really describe them as much, but on the other side of this table, all right, across this hallway, actually, this hall, are these creatures again, these hominids, all right? And they're eating over there, but they look like animals. For goodness sake, they just come out of the trees. We're all thinking that to each other. And when I look over, the person that's talking to me, and I'm starting to come in contact with these people again, I think, is looking at me and saying, look at them. They don't even absorb the energy from their food, and they're eating meat. They're not eating meat, they're eating dead animals, all right? And that was shocking for all of us sitting on the other side of this table, all right? And then I look over, and this same brother that I've seen before tell me we're going to pay, he's shaking his head, and he's almost verbally speaking this, and he's saying to me, and we're supposed to mate with them? And that, that brings something else to it. It's a hybrid project is what it was. And when you start looking at things like the Christian Bible talks about the Nephilim, okay, and these fallen angels, which is not what they were, fallen angels that were creating these different ones. And I think for our culture right now, for our century right now, this time, we should take some shows like Star Trek. The original Star Trek had one called Space Seed that led to a movie called The Wrath of Khan. But if anyone really looks at that, it deals with eugenics. And Khan and his whole group were tyrants that were genetically engineered. We're dealing with something not much different here, all right? These first Nephilims they were mutants, man. The Cyclops and these weird creatures that are coming up, Goliath, these giants that were coming out of the hills and things like that. That's who some of these beings were, okay? Make a little more sense?
No, it does. And the other day when you said that to me about the Wrath of Khan and that, I was just like, shit, I've never... never thought about that. And see, again, I've only just started getting into Star Trek because I never watched it till about last year or whatnot, and I've just been absorbing it when I can. I'm just like, this is, there's lots of signs in there. It's not all space cadet stuff. There's a lot of messages in there, a lot of things from technology to consciousness to how things are now, how they came to be. There's sort of like signs left, right, and centre throughout the whole lot of it.
Through the whole lot of it, little things like one, how the engine core looks when they started doing it about the next generation, how it pulses up. There's no way that someone that hasn't been on board a real ship doesn't know that, all right? Some of it is quite similar. Or Star Trek Voyager, they talk about these these bio-neural gel packs that power that ship, all right? And if you look at how it's actually a neural circuitry that goes through that ship, it's the beginnings of being an organic ship. And you've got several things on Star Trek, like the episode with the Next Generation, it's called Tin Man. Or Star Trek Voyager, the bioships, Species 8472, I think it was called. Or even Doctor Who. No one wants to talk about that a lot. We used to get blasted at for being Whovians when I was a kid. But the TARDIS itself, the time and random dimensions in space, is organic. It's grown in space. They say that. It's got a telepathic circuit. It dies.
See, there's all these commonalities. And one trippy thing I just want to bring up while I remember, I think it was Bill Jenkins in the 80s, maybe late 70s, had a show called Open Mind. Not Open Minds, Open Mind. And it was a talk show in America, a radio show. And I've actually got some old downloads. And it's awesome to listen to because on one show specifically, is it Forrester D. Kelly, or I'm trying to remember how to pronounce his name. He's in the old Star Trek, there's the Doctor or whatever.
Yeah, DeForest Kelly, yeah.
Right? He rings up and he talks about a sighting he had, and then he goes into other sightings he had, and then it goes, I can send you the download if you want sometime, and then he goes into how he's had more than one sighting, and then a couple of people start questioning him about thoughts at the time, and then he goes into, if I remember correctly, about how a lot of the people on the cast had experiences, and now they're like, basically, they were at the forefront of now showing to us, the rest of the world, going into technology and consciousness, just stuff that we think of as a show. Obviously, there's some subconscious thing playing out here, and there is a lot to Star Trek, and I say to people, check it. It's same with Star Wars and anything. There is something on another level there with that.
Oh, it's let's face it, the space intelligences are behind that. And they're the ones that are implanting this into the directors, into the creators. There's just no other way around it. Something like the movie we've discussed before, Cocoon. I've experienced something on a pure conscious ship that is quite similar to those beings that are portrayed in Cocoon. That leads me to believe that the director and writer and creator of that, Opie Cunningham, Ron Howard, is an experiencer of a type.
And I've too seen a being exactly, and I'd never seen Cocoon until I think around November last year, and this happened months before that. So there's no friggin' way to me. I didn't even know anything about it till I came across it.
Two things, Peter. When they, first of all, a lot of people don't see it. Remember when I asked people, you remember that movie? You remember what they looked like? And people was looking at me, well, they were like light or something. Yeah, exactly. Bingo. They were light. They were light beings. And not just that. That pool that the old man kept jumping in, technically it would have been charged with what we would call orgone energy, life energy. Now we've seen a lot of these USOs floating over bodies of water, and it appears that they're sucking up water into them. All right? That's a propulsion system that is so far beyond our technology right now that no one's giving that a credit, I think. But anyway, Cocoon's a good one.
No,
especially
definitely.
When he says to him, I make a bad choice every couple of thousand years, Brian Dennehy, the star of that, he says, I make a bad decision every couple of thousand years. The last time I chose Atlantis for a base, when everyone else said the North Pole, but it was too cold. He said, then it sank, and my ship didn't have enough to get all of our people back. So some of his crew members gave their life energy to the ship so they could make it back and they went in these cocoons. People aren't really listening to what they're saying. It's,
That's trippy, isn't it? That's definitely trippy.
So I feel like we got off from the Sons of God.
No, it's all right. Look, this is actually going to make people think and sort of look at things differently, because I always get a different perspective of things when talking to you. But going back to the Sons of Man and that, how does this play an effect to today? Like, obviously, we as a collective are a product of this in some way. Of what's happening in effect, what as the civilization is going on.
Well, I can tell you about the second cataclysm the way I've seen it. All right. What we have is we got to go back. This is a type 1 civilization, which we're getting close to now. All right. Ancient class 1 type 1 civilization. Mikako style.
Yeah.
Hikako. Anyway, that's kind of what we had before. Okay. And what happened was, when you see these pyramids and things like that, and some of these monolithic structures, they're not just astrological devices. They were also installations to protect the technology we had. Technology that was capable of converting energy into matter and matter into energy, okay? Which once again can be referenced kind of like in something like Star Trek, which is when they're beaming people. All right, but it's kind of the same system there. All right, but these instruments were powered by actually what we would call Kundalini energy, orgone energy from the user itself, which is not unlike what they're saying about the Roswell technology right now. Well, the pilots were actually the fuel themselves. They weren't just the guidance system; they were the fuel somehow. It's the same system. That is, our creative force is being used in that way. All right. So we have instruments I can remember that were, some of them housed in the pyramids, like one that's called the Staff of Life. It looks quite similar to an Anka. Okay,
is that what Moses was using?
Yes, he would have been the last initiate to leave Egypt after the technology was dematerialized. All right, because the sons of men, the hybrids, had taken over. They were going to come in and start destroying things, and that goes back to why they don't want anyone to know things, how black things were as far as melanin dominant individuals. Napoleon, what did he do? He went in there and pulled that nose off that Sphinx because it looked a little too black, African-like. What happened to Plato when he went back to Rome and talked about Atlantis? They were basically like, excuse my language, hey, that's that black shit. You get out of here with that.
Same with the Aboriginals. They've tried destroying it, and they've done a pretty darn good job, unfortunately, to get rid of a lot of Aboriginal knowledge and history, and which is why it's great that the elders are keeping it close to them than getting the white men and everyone else, because same thing again, because they're black, they hold great knowledge, which is why the Egyptians were going there in the first place, travelling across the bloody earth to get to the Aboriginals, and it's because the Aboriginals hold great knowledge.
And it goes back to, the individuals that were here first. And, and I say that not from a racist perspective. That's what I've been accused of. But I will tell you this much. I studied something that is called not just black consciousness, but black dot theory by Dr. Richard King and several others that developed this, which is a way of using even the Eye of Horus, which is pure melanin, okay, to go into our own melanin to erase the race memory, to awaken the race memory. All right, the cellular rest memory through the melanin. I tried that because our science is trying to say that melanocytes and melanin and melatonin are so separate, when ancient African history says it is not. All right, so I tried it, and what happened was I blasted myself open even more on these past life memories, okay, to where I could see it almost congruent at that point. You know what I mean? And that's how what's happened. The sons of God used the melanin to also inbred the gene memory, the race memory, the ancestry memory that every culture says we have, that one of the many things we can't seem to access here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's a technique I would say try.
Now, that's very interesting. What's coming to mind now, and we talked about this before the show to actually go into, was Christ consciousness, Yeshua, Jesus, all these different things going on. Do you want to address this? Because you opened up my mind on a lot of the things everyone's saying they've seen Jesus or this and that. And I've talked before about programs. They've on a different level, if people have been programmed with having that live, it's usually they're directly from source, so it's just a program downloaded, so they've got the experience and knowledge to come here and do what they've got to do. But when we go into all these people claiming they've had, and I've had experiences with Yeshua, but when I talk to you, the different aspect, you open me right up to a lot of things. In a positive light, you help me expand and see things that a lot of these beings have actually had a level of Christ consciousness, and that where people beforehand, like myself, were labeling things all in one way, and it's actually a lot different. You talk about, well, do you want to address it? Do you want to just address it and we'll go into it? Because
Sure.
this is where I'm learning with you, and it's opening me up to evolve as well in my walk here.
Man, that's heavy, Pete. Whoa. Okay. To finish up just the other part, this hybrid project, there was a carnal nature that came with the sons of men, okay? And you had these first hybrids that were like, you have cyclopses and mutations, all right, that obviously had to be done away with, I think similar to the dinosaurs, all right? But when you have the later hybrids, like Akhenaten and them, okay, they had the spiritual gifts of their fathers, the sons of God, all right, the elongated craniums with the enhanced endocrine system, pineal system, okay? They had that, but they also had the carnal nature of the sons of God, their mothers, the sons of men. Sons of men. So therefore, they gained initiation into these temples and to this technology, and their carnal natures arised, and the technology started destroying things. It was driven by life force, okay? And negative life force, it had what I saw is something quite similar to, it was an energy that was dissolving matter back into energy. And for me, when I see another movie we can reference, The Never-Ending Story, I might have mentioned this last time, but that one, the main nemesis in that movie was called the Nothing. It wasn't the Luck Dragon, it wasn't the big rock, it was the Nothing. And the Nothing was dissolving Fantasia, their planet, into nothing, right? That's exactly what happened to Mu, all right? What part wasn't taken over by tidal waves and natural cataclysms, all right? Which all we're messing with the pole shift. It was going to happen anyway, okay? So that's kind of where we're at there, but we're getting to where we come to where we're at now in a situation where we all have roundest craniums. The sons of God were eliminated as far as breeded out, and a lot of them left. This cataclysm messed everything up, okay? I remember things, getting in arguments with my brother they're saying, well, we're going to go help from the astral realm. No, we messed it up here now. We have to help. And when this cataclysm happened, everywhere the sons of God went, okay, the escapees, some that went in what we would call Venema craft right now, okay, and others that went into the sea in something, probably submarine, something similar to that. I think Noah's Ark would be similar, something that was built that could withstand these tidal forces from this device that went crazy. All right? Everywhere the sons of God went, you see these installations to protect the technology, these pyramids, the Mayans, Easter Island, you name it. We go on and on. All right? That's part of that there. So just to get us to where I feel why we're in the situation we are right now, the sons of men rule this place. And most of the sons of God were eliminated, okay? And we're relegated to being the great magicians that have structures that you and I still can't describe today. Science can anyway. You know what I mean? And that's why we don't want to say how far back our history really goes. That's one of the things. It's easier just to take these things with Jesus and then like this. I just told you the last instrument I see leaving was Moses. And he had a staff that had what technology really? If we want to look at it from 2015, Peter, what it had holographic technology.
Yeah, exactly.
Along with the other ones, better holographics that could take a serpent that may ate another one, okay? It had anti-gravitation, levitation abilities. He was parting sea, walking on water, doing things like that, or levitating it. That's anti-gravity, all right? That was one of these devices. It was one of the staffs of life. More than that, I recall the staff of life being in the capstone of the Great Pyramid and being used to control the weather. Okay? It could pull lightning to it. More than that, later on, the pyramids were changed to be temples to deceive the sons of men, along with the hieroglyphs that I think are partially crap outside of symbolism in them. Okay, the capstone and the staff also would draw, Egypt speaking, the water from the artesian well that's under the Nile there, and help inundate the delta there that was not normal once a year.
Yeah.
It was a water system, purification system, amongst other things. All right. So anyway, that's neither here nor there. The sons of God were basically eradicated, but one day I remember being told there would be another that would come, even a higher one. And if we look at how you and I have seen creation, those people that have really went to the theta state of their subconscious, being hypnotized there to see really what do you see, the beginning of creation, for some of us can see it. The first thing our Creator did as a singularity was to project souls. All right? You've got different souls that come out in waves, is what I've seen. You've got a first wave, second, third, all the way till you get to dense materialness like us, which are still endowed with the spirit of the Creator, that still is within perfection, that's immortal. We don't know how old we are. Can't remember shit either. Sorry, stuff.
Don't worry.
Yeah, it's great to incarnate here at the prison planet and not remember who you are, what you are, and be amongst a very dangerous, unstable population. But that's not prison, right? Anyway, this last Son of God I'm seeing coming, I think, is the being that they call Jesus, all right? And I say that because I'm not religious, all right? But I had to deal with the fact that when I started having experiences with inorganic beings, whether it be extraterrestrial or whatever, especially extraterrestrial, and I could receive them, I ask, what do you want? Who are you? And some of them can say, I can't tell you exactly what I am, but I can tell you this. I work for the Christ consciousness. They said the Christ energy. They said the office of the Christ. And then they enforced upon me, this is beyond your organized religion. It is not.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
and on top of that, anyone who wants to argue this, I would say this. Their energy, the love frequency of these beings preceded them. It came before they did.
Yeah.
And I don't feel that kind of love from people. We're too busy hating down here, being jealous of each other.
I 100% agree with that. Everything you just said. Like, fuck, I get so blissed out before an experience with something at that vibration that, again, the only thing I can equate it to is like a billion ecstasy tablets. I just can't put it any other way. It's just, you get the bubbling sensation, you get the euphoric sensation, and it's like you take, in these states, it's like sex times a billion, and there is no even thought of sex. It's just fucking precedes anything while in the human body computer that we can really perceive. But when you're in the energy bands of these beings, it's just another complete level that you can't really explain to people unless they've had it happen, can you?
No, you can't. Just like the telethought that comes from them. And it is like a download. You know, it's so much that you almost black out. It's not because they're hurting you. It's the frequency that they're trying to download you from when they're right in your presence is so much that the retention of memory of the event itself is hard. You know, my fourth regression, I told the nice lady, she does great, take me deep. I got to get to the theta state, not alpha, not beta. I got to know theta. I've got to remember this stuff. And then when it got done, I was just laying there. She's trying to bring me out of it. I just put my hand up. I said, I'm awake, because I felt like I never went under. I was like, man, this is expensive. I could have got my car fixed or done whatever, you know. And when I paid her the money and I went and I took she recorded some CDs, I threw it in the back of the seat and didn't listen to it. And when I did, finally, it was on me talking for an hour and a half. And I couldn't remember that, let alone remember the event when it happened itself. That throws a whole other thing on. My older brother Mitch goes, what's up, Mitch? Like that all the time. You know, it's kind of like that. Anyway, that kind of takes us to what I believe is some of the Jesus perspective. But we're dealing with a consciousness, the Christ consciousness, as was explained to me. So that means for this prison planet here that's so divided, this consciousness is going to have to manifest in several different forms. So I think we should look at things that, like, sadly, society, people tend to worship these individuals as God themselves when they were saying, no, our creator, our creator, have faith. You could do this too. You have Yeshua, you have Siddhartha Gautama, Buddha, you have Krishna, you have Quetzalcoatl. You have several that came down here and did that. Another one, the Prince of El Elyon, which I believe was Melchizedek.
Yeah, Muhammad.
Okay.
Had lots of these, yeah.
And you know that to reach all of the flock, I think that's necessary. So you had said something to me the other day that you thought that these all might be the same being. Same thing, same consciousness, and it's the love frequency, and our only way to escape the net that you and I talked about for hours last show.
Is
that kind of...
It does, and it's a good perspective for people to see it as. Is it's that level of consciousness which, you know, I've had it explained to me Christ consciousness as well, and then I hear people like James Gilliland who for years, and I wasn't even into any of this back then, going on about the same thing, along with many other people, including that Herzeg or whatever that wrote the Keys of Enoch, which you got me into in the first place. And then I wrote this other book lately, and it's got the same. Goes into it as well, which Shiji's talked about Christ consciousness and everything else, and I know that's a projection of whatever this being is wanted to project to me, but it's the same message throughout a lot of these teachings and experiences, which is reawakening us and reconnecting to what we're doing and why we're here partaking in what we're partaking. Something that would be cool to go into, but we mentioned it earlier. Now, I was on the Kelly and the Raw show earlier today, and she's an awesome chick.
Cool.
And you've been following her for a while. I mentioned you on the show because I said I think you two should talk sometime, and Sol's been following you for some time. No, but it is. She was going on about the light and the moon and leaving the outer body, and I just thought, look, I sort of paraphrased what you said. I may have not got it correct, but that's why I said you've really got to talk to Barry, because you'll see it anyway if you watch the show. But she spoke about, and this is where usually it's signs for me to bring something up. People ask questions about the shadow dudes with the hats, right? And I've had an experience with one of these beings. What would you like to say about that if you would like to go into it? About these types of beings.
I recently just got attacked today, actually, for saying that I didn't believe that when they were talking about the figure known as Jesus, they saying that is God. That is God. I said, look, I died also when I had my brain injuries. My body quit working. So I've seen the other side too. I've seen the Creator. I'm sorry, he wasn't some 6-foot Caucasian guy with a beard that didn't even look like that anyway. I mean, this is something that is projecting cosmoses, that's creating universes. Our Creator, it was beyond that, okay? And I don't mean to put down anyone's religion because I'm not religious, right? And they're truths all the way. I've studied most of them, you know, so I don't mean to do that. But throughout a lot of these, all right?
Fucking love you, man. You're awesome.
The shadows, man. Back to the shadows. Sorry. Let's get back to that. And this ties into the... Stop me. This time. Stop, man. You make start laughing. This tied back into the net we were talking about too. But for me, I will speak from my experiences how it happened for me, okay? Because I can't speak for everyone. I was obsessed. I can always see, okay, clairvoyantly to a certain degree. But man, I wanted to have the astral projection, the outer body experience, the OBE. That's what I was going for. So I was trying all these different techniques, trying to induce an OBE, all right? And man, it didn't work. You know what I mean? So I was like, man, can I just not do it? But I started, when I converted to not quite, almost a vegetarian diet, all right, and started doing that more and doing certain breathing practices and things like that, I inadvertently started seeing auras around people. And when I say that, I mean intense auras. I was in a biological anthropology class at the university here, and I was messing with the professor who was staying up there, Moore was his name, and we were talking about orang Pendak, the kind of Brazilian Bigfoot, a little shorter there, that raises his hands and stuff like that. He never heard of it. While we're talking, I start seeing this aura around him. He's standing in front of the projector. I mean, it's huge, though. I said, oh my gosh, it's got to be just a trick of the eye until it didn't go away. You know what I mean? I keep seeing auras around people. So this was a new gift. Then, right about this time, just afterwards, okay, I start seeing these shadows. And when I say that, I start seeing these flinting shadows out of my peripheral visions. And most people don't understand, if you study the retina, our peripheral vision is in black and white. That's why a lot of people can see spirits and inorganic beings out of their peripheral. But I would see these shadows. There were two types. One were spherical, one were a little more oval-like, all right? They're very quick, but they seem to be running. And so I started noticing one day I could see a couple of them like kind of hovering together, like they're maybe plotting or something like that. But I didn't truly know what they were, okay? They felt negative by far. They generated fear out of me, okay? So that's bad. Then one day I'm at my old job, and it was a bowling alley. And after hours, we could bowl if you're an employee, and one of my coworkers is bowling down there, like lane 2, and a completely empty place, all right? I see one of these shadows go by. It's one of the larger oval ones. I'm starting by this time being able to track them with my eyes just a little. And I see this thing, Pete, go up on her, behind her, and it attaches to what you and I would call her crown chakra, about right here. It elongates down to her root chakra. And then it begins pulsing in a like weird gray type of fashion, okay? And on the physical level, I could see my coworker bowling, going, I mean, she's bowling that stuff so hard, she's about to get a turkey, man. She's got to get a 300 out of this, all right? And I asked her name. I said, "Are you doing all right?" You know? And she says, "You know, Barry, I'm just thinking. I'm thinking myself into a bad place. That's what's happening." She was having a divorce was going to be coming for her soon, so that was, you know. But nonetheless, it doesn't stop that I saw this shadow feeding on her. And I think as people, for us to think that we have no natural predators because of our jungle, our concrete jungles, is inaccurate. We do. They just exist slightly beyond mortal vision. Mm-hmm. All right? What I didn't say, before seeing these shadows, one day I was outside and down my street, in the street light, I saw a gentleman walking around. All right? And he was rather tall, and he had on what appeared to be either a black cloak or a black duster, maybe, trench coat, yeah. And he had a large hat on. And where I come from, we had this myth about this dude called the Hook Man that has a hook, and he was jacking up teenagers in his park or something. And I thought, is this the Hook Man? So I was looking for the hook, and I didn't see a hook, but nonetheless, this was a menacing figure there. And I wouldn't say he was watching me as much as he seemed to be watching everything. Yeah. And he wanted me to know I was aware of him. All right? That sighting preceded seeing the shadows, the little circles, and the little ovular things. All right? If that makes sense. But anyway, there's some type of a inorganic being that feeds on the emotions of people. These beings have been here a long time. They're treating us like cattle, all right? They're getting us, look how the world is right now. Anyone that looks at Rupert Sheldrake has a thing called the morphogenic field that he says is generated basically how Yoda describes the Force in Star Wars you just talked about. Yeah, Return of the Jedi. People should check out how he described the Force quite a bit. He's describing the prime creator, source, as you say. You know, does that kind of make more sense there?
It does, and in saying that, would we be saying that what you're describing is one level of the archonic, or if we turned it and we wanted to label it, which I don't think there's even a name, but for the sake of the listeners and humanity in terms of, because we have to put everything in a friggin' box, if we say this is probably one level of the archonic network, it's parasitic, it's working from another level, it's manipulating, obviously it's doing this for the energy and what it gets out of it.
Yes. And, you know, we tied this into the net we talked about already. That's the thing, as you know, and we don't remember anything. We're unaware of these predators. Most of us are, all right, and we're constantly having things pop up in our life that are just tumultuous, and we're thinking, oh, it's just life, and life sucks. But in reality, is there something else behind some of that? You know what I mean? To keep us asleep like that, and to keep feeding on us like that. Recently, I'll tell you this is interesting. I'll give her a shout out because 2 days ago, I heard a lady named Heidi Hollis on Coast to Coast AM with George Knapp on the weekend,
Yeah.
and she spoke about the Hat Beings and the Hat Man and the Shadow Beings. And what I heard her say was very accurate from what I experienced personally. And she went into a fact of she kept saying that Jesus Christ was the only thing that would deter them that she found, and she didn't necessarily believe in that before. All right. Now I do find that interesting if I contrast that with Art Bell and Malachi Martin, who was with the Exorcist for the Vatican, and he talked about the perfectly possessed, which I just posted on Facebook and all that, and real exercising.
And we
Like
hear
how,
this with a lot of people, like even with the Bell Witch, and if we go through a lot of sort of haunted places and where apparently demonic activity is going on, it's like nothing can be done unless it's under the authority or by Jesus Christ or God themselves, you know what I mean? So this is where it opens up a lot of questions, but I know what you're saying there. Please go on.
you know, and the way I can say it is this, I think, Russ, considering that wasn't that gentleman's name, okay, it wasn't pronounced that way, and he didn't look like that, but that's neither here nor there. But I think, for the Christ consciousness, we need a focusing point for our will to intend our love and to gain access to the love frequency of the God consciousness. For me, when I saw the shadows, when I saw my coworker get attacked, man, I went home and prayed real quick. I said, please, I don't see that. I want to have astral body projection, but I don't want to project to those shadows, man, But I started finding out other cultures that are aware of these beings. I've heard them called flyers, demons, the jinn.
Yes,
I've heard several different words for these things, but these beings that are doing tricks and causing our emotions to flare. And it's not negative. And when I was doing this, anyone that was a loving person, I didn't see that they were getting attacked by any inorganic beings. So that tells me that the love frequency was impalatable to these shadows. All right. And when I got on Heidi's website just last night, it was I got attacked for saying that I think that just the words Jesus Christ may not always be enough. And Malachi Martin says yes, Heidi says yes, but if we look at something like that book that's now called The Deadly Haunting, I can't think of the lady's name that wrote it, but it's a fascinating book as far as she had a piece of property and a few houses on there that were so demonically possessed. Every time they leave the bathroom, there was writing on the mirror when they come back in. They ask a question, it puts up there. And, they had exorcists try to come in there and get rid of this thing, and it laughed. And when they said they brought the Jesus thing up, it said, that's a good story, but it doesn't get rid of us. So that, makes me wonder a little how far that goes. But we need a focus point for the Christ consciousness and love to get through. And I think that's what that presents for us, is a chance of that. But I also say, sorry.
No, you're all right. No, finish that off because we'll go into the next thing in a minute, which will lead into that. But finish it off, please, mate. You're all right.
Oh man, no, that's most of it. And I'm not discrediting him because I myself, like you do, have had experience with the being we would call Yehoshua. Okay? And more than that, I've been here before on this planet. I am one of the people that came here and remember that. Anybody ever look at the show? It's called Ghost in My Child. It's only on the second season. Look at that. These children that seem to remember being on Earth before, as far back as 9/11 even, okay? And can remember dying. This net is being broken down, and more energy like that is coming in. Souls are coming through that can remember. A lot of us are awakening in that way, So I think maybe for the shadows, the archons, that creates a problem. If you have a ranch and you've got 200 cows and 5 ranchers, and the cows become sentient, you've got a problem.
Yeah, definitely. It's they're losing their grip, and we're seeing this every day. Like even now, there's so much going on. Not like in space, in energy-wise, even here now with bloody what governments are doing and the price of petrol going. Like we're having a shake-up, even the weather, and we're having energetic changes, and we can see this with the weather. It's sort of cleaning up before it even comes into fruition. Here in Melbourne, it's a friggin' hot day today, and it's summer here, but it's been cold. I've been wearing tracksuits and that most of the time up until now. So this is where, and we've got a comet apparently coming past on Australia Day, which is next month. We've just had New Year's and Christmas, which, you know, the Illuminati and the other powers that be know how this energetically works, and they manipulate the esoteric knowledge for their gain. Mm-hmm. So we've got lots going on, and why is petrol getting cheaper? We've got all just so many things happening now. So there is a breakdown, there's a shake-up, and now it's where we make things of what we made. So there's lots going on, and definitely there's been a breakdown in what we can say is the Archonic Network. What would be cool to go into, but is talking about Yeshua, Jesus, as some would like to say. Do you want to go into the resurrection technology?
I knew you were going to go there, man. I've been getting Spirit has been bombing me for about the last 20 minutes to talk about the resurrection technology. All right. I think we could tie that into two ways. All right. The resurrection technology. The first person I heard speak of it was Linda Moulton Howe.
I'm not drinking beer, by the way. Just it's ginger beer, actually. It is beer, but it's not alcoholic. Go on, mate.
Maybe some Jägermeister. It looks like some Jäger there. Anyway, Linda Moulton Howe, I heard talk about this resurrection technology that she's had dozens of experiencers talk about. All right, and I guess I'll go into that first. She speaks like the one that comes to my mind is the experiencers that had a being there that I believe was a mantid that walked over. There was another experiencer on a table, all right, and they went over and pulled his heart out physically with his hand out. And when he pulled it out, the heart was already cauterized and not bloody or anything. And then they walked over to a cloning station, a tube, and one of the clone bodies in there appeared to be just a few years younger than this man on the table. And they said there's something wrong with his heart, and he's got too much he has to do here still. So they used this black cube to transfer his soul into this clone body, and said, you know, he won't be, no one will know.
Black box, black cube, black box.
Black cube.
And yes, we hear Whitley Strieber talk of this also. There's a few other experiences that talk about the black box, how they've been put into it. And it's like their souls put into it.
See, and that takes it to another level, all right? Now, they were doing healing on this guy. So this was a positive experience that Linda Moulton Howe was talking about. But that takes us into the research of the belated Dr. Carla Turner, all right? And her book, Masquerading Angels, and books like that. You know, she spoke of that, and she dealt with the fact that there's a deception going, and the virtual technology you and I talked about before, I've experienced, and I was told by my guide so that could be used by negatives, all right? How that's used to actually trick people and confuse people. But then she talked about these black boxes, and that these people's souls being taken out of their bodies with these black boxes. I just posted something. It's a picture that was drawn by Christine Dennett, Cassara, of a being standing over a child with a black box. And the mother came in the room and said, "Get out of here," and disappeared. You know, that says something. I myself, during my experiences, I've seen a black box. But however, this was connected to these nanotubes.
Not right? Fiber optic like, or different from fiber optic type?
Fiber optic, more, but even surrounded by metal going up, kind of. Yeah. And it looked almost resembled a wheel. And they were telling me that it was a condenser, a denser. They gave me a word. I have to find it again. But anyway, this word, when I looked it up, would actually be a way of like converting water, orgone, into energy for anti-gravity release around the ship. And man, I know a little bit about orgone and about anti-gravity. I never even thought to connect those two types of technology. Yeah. But if you're dealing with a sentient spaceship, a living being,
So you're saying that the power source for some anti-grav is orgone energy.
Yes,
Pretty
yes.
much how, like, it's different, but like Bob Lazar said, there was an element 115 that once you hit it with a photon or proton, I forget what it was, it bombards it up to 116, and that was the power source for that anti-grav. But you're talking about a different level of consciousness where it's basically tapping into orgone energy, and that's the power source for the
Yeah.
anti-grav technology.
You know, a lot of like Preston Dennett has reported that a lot in his books.
I'll have him back on
USO.
soon too.
Oh, he's great, man. Unidentified submerged objects, but they've been seen sucking up water into their underneath, and no one knows what they're doing. That would be it. You know, and people saying they
You don't
saw
think it's actually
ships over there.
You think they're sucking up orgone energy into the crafts when people see that?
Yes, yes, yes. I think they're charging up. That's what I think. And you know, there's so many different types of ships. Like the one where I saw my friend Bill that I did your first show with. That was more of a physical creation. But him, as so many people I've seen, were all walking around kind of, they're in their dream bodies, their astral body. And I say that because I'm there physically and I'm getting sick, as I've described several times there, something you will not forget if you're there physically. And they're kind of transparent, but they're doing things. They're being shown technology. They're touching the living light that is projected from one of these engines that goes up like a column of light. Anyone that's familiar with Sheldon Needle, I think it is, Nidle, he claims to have communication with Arcturians, but when he makes drawings of the ships, you always see this beam of light coming up from the middle. It looks similar to a Star Trek propulsion unit, kind of, the way to describe that.
And it's funny you bring up, because with my regression where you were brought up and others were brought up in sort of like a federation, that was terms they said we gave, but it was very, very similar. That's what it was like. Everyone was different. It was like it was like your bodies that were used for another. Like we're living all these lives at the same time, but one facet of my oversoul was living these lives, and it was connected to all you guys in a craft similar like that. Which it was funny because Soul said just beforehand there was this experience, and then when that was asked in the regression, it was very similar, connected to all of us even tighter, which is weird because you and Soul both have that strong connection as well going back. You guys talk about past life stuff. It's cool. It's awesome stuff. Going into the resurrection technologies, but what's been the variety and different types and different species that have been using this? Is it very common throughout a lot of these higher evolved beings?
You know, Pete, I don't know, man. I can say this, like from my personal experiences, they have always revolved around healing, and it's always been about Earth, okay? And I've seen people in these dream bodies being healed. Last show I described an engine that they said the sound of it itself will heal astral dream bodies and physical bodies. But I've seen other stuff too. I've seen healing rooms that appear to be like, if you're going along one of these corridors, okay, they're like on the right-hand side, and they would appear to be part of the wall, okay, but it's not. It's some type, I won't call it a sick pay, I don't know, but the inside of it is just lights in there, healing lights, all right? I've seen other rooms that would be humans in astral body laying on these beds, okay, and it appears to be, and it's disconcerting because there's an instrument going over them, all right, and with a light that looks to me similar to spider webs, silk coming out, okay, and they're healing. They're doing something, focusing on this light. It's a healing, but yet there's no one actually holding the device. Whoever's holding the device is beyond my mortal vision. And things like that makes it hard to even have a retention of this memory on top of being sick there. I see why they take people there on dream body. You'll do much better.
Well, like you said, when you're up there and while you're feeling groggy the next days, a lot of the time has got to do with the reason you were saying was breathing in that blue type or the atmosphere is basically what makes you feel like shit when you get back the next day.
Yes, definitely. You know, when dealing with this resurrection technology, even the healings I've seen are 1,000 years beyond our technology. All right. But then that goes to the fact that we have experiencers, multitudes, saying they've seen souls being transferred, or it's happened to them, or this is a technology that this clone technology is using. All right. Now, I'm sorry, but doesn't that put a whole new light on what we would call the resurrection of Jesus? Concerning that you and I know darn well, and no one that wants to admit it, it doesn't take ancient aliens, Dr. Schlocko with the hair, to tell you that you know that it was the way it was, immaculate conception would be no more than what we're doing right now. You know, we could do that with our science right now.
Yeah.
You've got paintings of people that are seeing ships around when he incarnated, all right? And I think that needs to be really addressed. I also look at when I actually read the Bible, what I can remember, like when it talks about when he comes back after his crucifixion, all right? First time he showed up was outside of that cave where he was buried, right? And when the people go, his disciples go in there, and they see him, the angel comes down and tells him, oh, he's not here. You're looking for the dead amongst the living, yada, yada, which they don't describe what these angels look like, interestingly enough. But when they go outside, he's out there, and he talks to them. When they try to approach him, he wouldn't let them touch him, correct? Mm-hmm. He was a bunch of light around him. Wow. That sounds an awful lot like a holographic projection, doesn't it? I'm seeing one of the sons of God in a healing chamber right now. Okay, that's where I've been seeing him in a healing chamber. And when he showed up the second or third time, he ate with the people. He ate with them, and he said he had holes in his hands and feet, and he let them touch them. That means he was more corporeal. Whatever type of regeneration he was going through obviously wasn't complete the first time he showed up. This is a technology we're dealing with here, all right? And I'm not saying that he isn't what people think he was. I'm not saying that, all right? I'm not saying I don't believe in the individual at all. I have a memory of him. I think a lot of us have been here before.
I think now this is where the viewers and listeners will be going, 40 minutes later, and I like it because it makes me just, look, it's mind-opening, definitely. And this is what you're connecting, and remember, this is shit that people need to hear. This is really stuff that people do need to hear, because 9 times out of 10 people that are listening to this right now, and I'll tell you what, the people that listen and watch this show, they are highly intelligent, they are open-minded, but they will not go to places like that. Not because they're not open-minded, it's just sometimes you don't connect the dots. And here you are saying this, and we go back to Yeshua Jesus, and you connect this resurrection technology with it, it does make you think on a different level than before.
Mm-hmm. And I understand nobody wants to touch it right now. Because I'll tell you, I've never seen anything like religion, man. Okay? It is the greatest auto-suggestion ever, man. And when I look at, I'm sorry, I'm going to throw this out. Somebody's going to get mad at me here. Christianity, all right? Put it to you like this. We don't remember where we came from before we were born here, before we incarnate. We don't know where we're going afterwards, all right? But we're going to follow Christianity, all right? And we're going to follow this way of doing things. Some of the things in the Bible teach us how to live. No doubt about that. I've seen it. It's a good code for that. But to live your life out of that single book and think that describes our Creator, when we can look through the Hubble and see different, the Hubble telescope and see different, that's almost ludicrous, all right, to that degree. And I've never seen anything, and most people will go along with Christianity and say, I'm going to follow this and do it just like these other people are doing it, just in case I'm wrong, I'm not going to go out of this box, because if I'm wrong, I don't want to be shoveling sulfur into a river for eternity with a demon that looks like a goat poking me in the butt with a pitchfork. Most people that auto-suggestion, Pete, is so strong that most people will go along with the organized religion just in case, instead of trying to explore their own awareness through action, through intention. How do they think the Creator got our souls, our cosmos into existence, our souls? He intended it through loneliness.
So this is what gives me hope, is having the viewers and listeners like I have on this show, because it shows that others are out there thinking along different lines, and they're not going inside the little box. And some of them are probably religious that do listen to this show, but they're open-minded enough to listen and watch shows like this. So this is where that gives me hope. And especially some of the comments we get and stuff like that, it does give me hope.
Really cool. And I'll say something about that too. I didn't know what it was at first. I've seen these things, but I remember the cataclysm, and slightly after that, like Egypt, okay, and things like that, and other places that we all went, okay, and things getting out of control, okay. Then remember another person is supposed to come back, and I always tried to interact with people that could see more than me, you know what I mean, or at least as much. All right, and I started having a number of clairvoyants coming up to me saying, you've got so many angels and light beings around you, it's unreal. And they're all trying to talk to me. And don't you remember walking with the Great One? And some of these people aren't even religious. What? Don't you remember walking with the Great One? They say that, and then finally come out, Jesus, don't you remember it? And to be honest with you, I always had a memory of that, but I thought it got to be my imagination.
Yeah.
Because what I'm seeing is myself in a light body coming back here, being around this individual, trying to help, as many other non-corporeal spirits were here, non-physicals helping, okay? And that's what I see. But I wasn't here physically. That wasn't one of the times I came in that way. A lot of people have asked me recently, due to these shows, who are you? Who are you? Who were you in history back then? And I'm not anyone that ever would appear at any of the historical records. It's one of the deals that things were tried to be kept private by all means because the sons of men were taken over. But I can remember things, a lot of things. You know what I mean? But it's not always about the need of our ego to be, I was King Tut. It's not about that. It doesn't matter in that way. That's ego. It's about realization of our own awareness and our own consciousness. And the fact that most of us have incarnated here before and can't remember it and don't know how long we've been doing it. We don't really know how old Earth is.
We don't.
Sorry,
we don't. It does open up a lot of things, and it opens up a lot of questions as well. Look, we'll wrap it up soon, but what I'd like to go into before we do so is, with the energies at the moment, with what's going on here, whether it's with government, energetically, disclosure, all these different things going on, what do you foresee for the short term in terms of probabilities and outcomes of just where things are at the moment? We hear about disclosure and the government's getting ready to tell us this and that. And what's your take on things at the moment?
Good question. I will say this, something that actually not hiding anymore and talking with you and others and the responses that we've got from this show that has showed me is this shift that we've all been talking about, and this great shift. We think it's going to be something that just stops our perception, like bam. But no, I see how much happening it already is. A lot of these individuals that are asking me questions and taking time to communicate with me are around the age of about 21 to 29, I would say. All right, maybe 30, 31 at the most. Mm-hmm. I started realizing these are some of the people we used to call starseeds that were just the toddlers, 20 years ago. And I used to back then, I used to test starseeds. Like I was telling you, I don't always like that word, indigo children. There's 1,000 words. Homo superior, maybe. I don't know. But I like testing them a little telepathically. Those of us that were born in that gift, you think something to one of these kids that you think is one of them. And last time I did it, my lady friend got really kind of freaked out because this kid just dropped his toy. He's in a thing. He looks up at me. He's got his eyes are up to here. And he's looking at me. I asked him how he was. He looked at me like, well, who the hell are you to think to me like that? No one else can do it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Little things like that. But these individuals are getting older now. And I realized that when talking to them, how brilliant some of them are. They're asking these questions and the amount of contact that they're having. And a lot of it is astral, dream contact. Mine started like that. And I asked for something more. Because I might have been crazy. Who knows? Hopefully not. But you never know. You know what I mean? But right now, that is the shift that's happening with these young people and with this net coming down. And I think that's one of our best hopes right now. The second hope would be what I've seen, I can only speak for myself, is I've seen a type of divine intervention coming. at divine visual intervention. Um, a lot of people say things like a second coming, this and that, but you and I would correlate it more with one of a mothership coming here and maybe several of them pulling up over a couple of major cities, even for a minute or two. That's going to stop everything. Anyone that really looks into the remote viewing done by Major Ed Dames, when he talks about that free video anyone could get on his website and order it called The Kill Shot, he says that during this war we're all going through during the polar shift, suddenly all the soldiers put down their weapons and are looking up. Something comes in and they're all looking up. And they put their weapons down and go home to their loved ones. All the remote viewers for the government saw that. All right? That, to me, implies the things we talked about before, a Bracewell probe, the living library, something that came from this first Earth, this Type 1 civilization we've been talking about. Like right now, Voyager will come back and all that. Goes back to Star Trek, Voyager.
Yep.
But when something like that happens, that may be the visual intervention that we need that steps forward, okay? And right now, you and I know, anyone that can see knows we have resident seraphim angels right here on Earth. They've been here long before humanity. And right now, they're here wanting to help, but we don't even know where to meet them. We have to find a medium ground to meet them. And I've seen things like schools where humans are only custodians and students. And the teachers are non-corporeal, non-physicals. And I think that's where we have to go to save this planet. If not, humanity's going to eradicate itself or have to be so destroyed by natural cataclysms that we're going to have to deal with the other humans that are here to help us rebuild and the other societies to help us rebuild. And I hope it doesn't come to that, you know.
So,
but man, when you look,
yeah, no, it's some food for thought, exactly. And you know, I'm expecting some more Earth changes very soon with what's going on, especially for myself lately and what's been going on, especially with the energies changing at the moment. Where we are and where we're coming through, there's going to be definitely some turbulent times, but it's like cleaning up. This is what happens when you clean up. Whether it's your own baggage or you're going from one state to another, there's a turbulent time, and it's the changing phase. And I'm seeing this more on a collective level more than individual now, because we've basically gone through that phase. Those that are in line with getting with the program, they've done a lot of that already. It'll continue a little bit, but the main phase of it is over now. Now it's a collective time to do it.
You know, real quick, something I kind of broke off on. Mm-hmm. We were talking about the morphogenic field by Rupert Sheldrake.
Yeah, yep.
And I correlated that to what Yoda calls the Force. Now, if anyone listened to what he told Skywalker, he said it's generated by all living things. It's caused by all living things, all right? But the morphogenic field of Earth right now is negative, man. It's one of hate, murder, mine, okay? And the more of that dark thing happens, the more these shadow beings are able to use that energy to, I think, materialize more into these hat forms and things like that. They're getting stronger. They're able to come through more like that. And by this very same token, I think we need to look at the Gaia concept and how our own sun is reacting to us. And if we look at psychotronic energy, morphogenic field, it's reacting to the negative field being generated by Earth. Earth is screaming for help, and we're jacking up more. You know, I talked about that on the show before, right. I think. But people didn't really think about that. And I say this, our sun is acting very erratic.
Oh, yeah.
It's emitting solar flares and things that, man, don't take much. If one of those is Earth-directed, we may not be totally burned up and burned out, but it knocks out those satellites or those power grids.
Some trouble there. One thing too, you've got how do you pronounce that book you've got there with you? It's the blue book you were showing me and sold before the show.
The Urantia Book. It's an older book. And
can you go into that a little bit with your, because I really, I love your perspective on things, and I think we need to hear what you were saying to me and Sol before the show in terms of the racist side of things, but also how spot on in other ways it isn't. And just my opinion on that, I think, I haven't read the book, but just like any book with good knowledge, like I've spoken about many times before, like many of the ancient saints and sages and beings that we classify as that, they're real, because they couldn't hide them from word of mouth and they're well known, they've got the teachings and therefore manipulated the teachings with these beings in it because they couldn't hide who these beings were. And they've done it in a controlling way to manipulate those who read the book. So this is sort of what's happened with that book. But would you mind going into it?
Sure. The book definitely deserves discernment, all right? It's thick. It's about 2,000 some pages, all right? Took me about 2 years to read it, actually.
Oh, God.
First got it. It's high school when I first got this thing. Here's the deal about it, all right? I've got some issues with how it came into being, okay, as a lot of people do. But more to the point, when it comes to the race section of it and the ethnic section, it is horrible. It is so skewed that it will offend anyone of ethnicity, all right? But when it comes to the other parts of it, Urantia Book, Urantia means earth, so it means the earth book, all right? But they go through it describing what they call super universes, our creator, the divisions of our creation, our creator, super universes down to local universes like where we live here, things like the Lucifer rebellion, the super minds that existed once that rebelled against our creator. They go into the angelic hierarchy, not just of earth, but of the cosmos. And when they do that, I would say people should probably pay attention. The descriptions they give are very vivid. This book is pretty old. I mean, it's like at least 50, 60 years old. It's like, that way it's kind of like a good tool, like the J.J. Hertog Keys of Enoch.
Very much so. So basically, in some areas, the book's full of shit with the race side of things and how it came into being. But then there's stuff like anything that's really good. There's usually a lot of misinformation thrown in with a few real gems. How apparently did that book come into being? Who wrote it and where's it from?
It was some type of a psychologist, I believe, and he said something like one day it appeared on his back step or something like that. But in reality, it's a bunch of channelings that are done, and the beings that they're channeling are quite interesting. The names that come up are quite interesting because not just does it have biblical references, but beyond that. You know what I mean? And J.J. Hertog's book does the same thing. But that way it was given to this guy, apparently. That's what he said. But it was a channeling done by several people. But that leaves some description in it. But there was another book that I had laid on you, The Only Planet of Choice. I don't have that one in here. But everybody really took to that one. And if anyone really reads that book, there's several people asking questions to the channeler. And one of them on there is GR, is all it's abbreviated as. That's Gene Roddenberry. And that was about maybe, 6 or 7 years before the original Star Trek. So going back to the 50s there, all right? So when people watch things like Star Trek, they say, check it out, you know? Some of the things that were being said there, some of the things he's trying to illustrate, you know, not just racially, but Federation-wise, what they're calling the Federation and things like that. Did that answer your question about this one, though?
Yeah, but definitely. I just wanted to make that, be aware in people's consciousness in the body computer so that, at least there might be something they want to go and check out for themselves, just like the Keys of Enoch, because recently I posted a video that was only done this month from J.J. Hertog, or how do you spell it? Yeah, on the Keys of Enoch with his partner, I think it's his partner, and it's funny how a lot of what he wrote about, or Enoch or Metatron, whoever wrote this book through him in the 70s, is scientifically, a lot of it's starting to be proven pretty much spot on a in-depth level, not just
mechanically, it's out of control. Quantum mechanically, that book is out of control. And what first really drove me to that book, first of all, was guided to it. Somebody was going to give it to me, apparently, no matter what. And that's going back now, early 90s now, 90, 91. But I will say this. One of my physical experiences where I saw a ship that I've described before, it looked like a Pleiadian ship, a metal craft, start shining and morphing into what we would call a quasi-crystal. That book has a thing it calls the Merkabah and the tri-pyramidal Merkabah, and they give illustrations of it transforming from a saucer ship into these crystals. And bro, there's no way anyone would know that wasn't either communicating with these beings or at least being downloaded. You know what I mean? I couldn't even find another way to even describe what I saw. I was being relegated to things like Ezekiel and how he described the wheel, and that wasn't right either. Not for what I saw. You know what I mean? So, like I said, they're all just tools. These books are tools. None of them are to be lived our life by, but they're tools that connect this puzzle we're in, you know?
Definitely. I would agree 100% on that.
The second part of that book, actually, Urantia, is all about Jesus, and it's all directed towards him, all right? And that's interesting because they describe what he was as a divine persona, which I think should be looked at a little. But the first part of the book especially is, like I said, I'm not religious, but the first part of that book, the history of Earth, the history of why we're in quarantine, which you and I have heard a lot. I'd never heard that until I read that book, and it talked about these circuits, universal circuits of energy that we're cut off from, and why it's so hard for our angels and our light beings here being away, cut off from source like that. They have to go on their own pattern almost. Something to think of,
Yeah, definitely. We'll wrap it up there, mate, and I'm sure that's what's happened from this is you got a lot of people thinking like always. I love having you on and catching up in our talks because it's never a dull moment, I'll say that.
Thanks, man. Hopefully it pissed anybody off this time. We've been doing that all day.
Well, if you did, fuck them. That's all I'm going to say. Sorry, but yeah, that's the way it's got to be sometimes, unfortunately, for them. So don't worry about it, brother, and cheers again.
Right on. Thank you, Pete. Appreciate you, man.